The people are both the masters of both the Congress and the courts. Not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert it. Where the people fear the government, you have tyranny. And where the government fears the people, you have liberty. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. My name's still Daniel Hapney, and this is The Real Story. And what I have for you tonight, some news. We're going to try to get a little format going for you, and we're going to go over a little bit of the news. What's happening in the in the world around you, because you may be too busy to catch the news, and/or you may have been lied to during your news. And so you can bounce what I say off what you hear off the mass media, and find out which one makes more sense. And then what I was going to do is I was going to go over a great book that I had just completed, which was a book by Jim Marrs. And then we're going to finish this up with a little bit of JFK info, so you can get a better understanding of what John Fitzgerald Kennedy knew and why the media would portray some things about him and not tell you other things, things that he tried to tell us and tell the American people. So what we have for you, first we'll go over some news. Okay, it's the week after the election thing. We have a president-elect thing. To date the show, we're going to say this is November. We're about the 10th or the 12th, somewhere before the 15th. And so what do we know? Well, we know that our new everything's going to be wonderful president-elect has already chosen someone to be a White House chief of staff, I guess. And the person he chose was this guy by the name of Rahm Emanuel, if I get him right. And to me, it sounds a little Egyptian, but, the Ram thing, Ra and all that other stuff, the big eye. But what do I know about him? Well, what should you know about him? Well, I think he was involved in the assault weapons ban and stuff, because the last thing we want is a populace that not only can't protect themselves, but more importantly are easy to control. The other thing that we found out about the gentleman is he was big pushing NAFTA. Yeah, remember that thing NAFTA a while ago, the North American Free Trade Agreement and all that? And how much has that helped you? Has it helped all those auto workers? Has it helped the people in the textiles? Has it helped everybody you know? Does everybody, when you go to work, they say, gee, God bless those guys for passing NAFTA. Gee, I'm glad they gave money to foreigners and stuff. So anyway, a little bit of news. So we got a new guy, we're going to have a chief of staff guy. And what else has been happening in the news? Well, it's been now a week or two since they said they needed a bailout, rescue plan. Remember, we changed the words like George Orwell would do. And then Dan came up and said the rip-off. And what have we learned in that week, 2 week period? We've learned that they don't want to tell you where they're, putting those trillions of dollars. Yet we've also learned, thank you to the New York Times, that people like Goldman Sachs, they're doing what? They're giving each other bonuses? How interesting. B of A giving each other bonuses, and you're paying for them? Yeah. And last week's show, I brought forth the word that I wanted you to, practice saying to your children, that is hyperinflation, because of all this money printing. And it's rather interesting. I'm going a little fast, and I'll slow down. It's rather interesting that, or at least I'd like you viewers to consider. Yeah, remember the Federal Reserve show I did? Okay, do you remember anything about the Federal Reserve? Were they a public bank, or were they a private bank? Were they a banking cartel like OPEC is a oil-producing cartel? What's been happening with this bailout money? Well, we see that the big rich banks have been getting your money, so we took from the poor, or at least the not so affluent and wealthy, and we gave it to the really rich. And what are they doing? They're buying up banks. And manipulating markets, and then what, buying control of companies while the price is real low? Rather interesting how they do this. Would you be surprised if this wasn't the first time in history that something like this was done? Would that surprise you at all? So anyway, I got a little clip for you, and Patrick, can we play that clip? And this is Alan Greenspan telling you how much control you have over the central bank, that private central bank, that creates the money from nothing.
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter. And I've had very good relationships with presidents.
You found out that this private banking cartel, at least the ex-chairman told you that, you know, we pretty much do what we want. And we don't have to listen to anyone. And what's rather interesting is I know you're all going to go back and look in history and say, well, in 1913, when they created that Federal Reserve system, they put a clause in there, you know, and if you go down, I want to say it's like the 8th item, maybe item E or G or something. And if you look at it, it says, this bank doesn't have to pay any taxes. No federal taxes, no state taxes, no local taxes. So here's a tax-free organization that creates money from nothing. And remember, go back a week or two with the show, and I would have told you that they created $930 billion in 1 week. They didn't tell you who they gave it to or what they spent it on, but they told you, yeah, we created that. And that's interesting that they did that, because a while ago they stopped telling you how much money was out there, what the aggregate money supply was, which used to be known as the M3. So, what are you realizing? Or at least, hopefully, what questions would you ask? You might ask, well, how much money have they created? And in the case of this bailout rescue ripoff plan, who's getting that money that your children are going to have to pay taxes on, that you are going to have to pay taxes? And I don't know if you've paid attention to the news, but whether you live in a big community like New York or Los Angeles or Boston, or you live in a small community like Sharon, that I guess your taxes are going to have to go up, huh? Because the cost of things are going up. Remember I mentioned the words hyperinflation? Yes, because as the dollar loses its value, okay, things cost more, which basically means we're going to put more burden upon you and your relatives and your future relatives that you don't even know yet. And I've got to ask you, did you listen to Alan Greenspan? Do you understand what he just said? He just said, hey, we're a private organization. I'm telling you, they create money from nothing. There is no reserve. And they don't care what anybody in the government says. Now, a lot of you people, you've probably seen this. We've seen this a lot. We saw it a lot after 9/11 because we were pushing the whole patriotic thing, right? Because we were attacked and we knew that if we go together, we'll have unity and strength. At the same time, though, they stopped showing you this. The Constitution of the United States of America. Well, anywhere in here, does it say anything about allowing a private bank to create our currency from nothing? Let alone to tax you for all that money created? Let alone, where's the control? Remember, this document created an agreement between the people and the government where the government would be open, not secretive, huh? And where we could hold the government accountable, not we're not going to tell you because we don't care. But if you listen to Alan, what did Alan just tell you? Alan told you that we'll do what we please and no branch or no level, executive, judicial, or legislative part of our government can have any control or say over what we do. So you, meanwhile, you out there, are you becoming slaves slowly? Is your currency losing value? Do you remember what houses used to cost? Should we go back in time for the old viewers? And at what point will you stop wanting to be slaves? Will you understand that this is not the first time in history? So with that, we're going to segue, and I'm going to segue to a piece. I read an extremely good book. I highly recommend you find it. It's called The Rise of the Fourth Reich by a gentleman by the name of Jim Marrs. I learned about it because I listened to a radio program where he was being interviewed. And I thought the interview was so good that I actually will offer to you, if you contact me, I will get you a copy of it. I think it's extremely important that we have an understanding of the history we haven't been taught. And why I say that is many people, and especially Sharon viewers, having relatives who suffered through the Holocaust, understand that we may have beaten Germany during the Second World War. But did we defeat the Nazis? Is the question I pose to you. And when I say that, I know it sounds weird. It's like, wow, I thought we beat the Nazis. I thought the Nazis were beaten. What if the Nazis lived on past that? What if they got a lot of their money and their secrets and the loot from Europe out in 43? You thought you beat them in 44 and 45, huh? What if they kind of relocated? What if they relocated and you can find out that, remember that Evita, the Perones down in Argentina? Don't cry for me, Argentina. Okay, well, what do we know about that? Well, gee, there were a lot of Germans moving down there. Remember Mengele? That's right. Bormann mean anything to you? And once again, if all this money and this power and this loot from the war, and also, what about if all, a lot of the science made it out? Because they were leaps and bounds about, ahead of everybody else in science.